Alright guys, nice to have you back. In this video we're going to finally create a graph. So this is going to be fun. Just in case you're a little bit late to the party here, we're creating a graph where we can select the cohort of interest. Think of this as a positional group. Each athlete has a positional group or a cohort of interest. In our case, these students have a cohort that they'd like to work with, but in your case, there may be an athlete here in a cohort of, or in a positional group here. So pretend like you're picking your position, and we also have the ability to pick load, which we have RP, duration, SRP, and grade, which isn't that's a performance metric, not necessarily load. And we also have the ability to pick our item of readiness here, and those should display in the graph. So the first thing that I'm going to do is our graph is talking with this information, just so we know. This will be hidden at some point. I'm going to go to insert, and I'm going to insert the type of graph that I want. I'm going to say, yeah, all right, I want a bar chart. It's blank right now. I'm going to right click and select the data that I want to use. Something like this is going to pop up. You could select the range. Like if I select this here, it'll put something together for me. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. So it puts something together using the data set that I have. But another way to do it, just in case, let's say that for whatever reason doesn't really work well for you, you can select data and just add series manually. And a series, think of a series as a line or a bar on this chart. That's what they will be, at least in this case. Let's ask me for a series name and series values. Well, we got two series here. We got load and readiness. The first one is going to be called load. And our values, I'm going to click on this button here. I'm going to select the cells that the values are coming from. It's whatever these load cells are. Remember, so what this graph is doing is it's going to take these dates along the x-axis and display the load over time. And that load is going to be whatever we select here. It could be duration, RP, SRP. And along with those dates, it's also going to select readiness over time. And this readiness could be energy, sleep quality, stress, whatever we select here. But in any case, that'll reflect in these numbers down here. So we set up calculations to do that. So I'm going to finish that. Now I have load values over time. This is the horizontal axis category. So if I just click OK for now, it's just displaying, it's in a date format for some reason, but it's just displaying, should be just be displaying numbers. But if I go to this horizontal axis category, labels, label category, and I select the dates and click OK, it's going to show the dates now. And I'm going to add another series called readiness, because that's our other metric that we want to display on this chart. And I'm going to select the readiness numbers here, click OK. And I'm going to again do this horizontal. You don't have to do this, but I'm going to select the horizontal axes as the dates. Click OK, click OK. Okay, now we have a graph of stuff over time. Okay, I don't know. Well, the first thing is maybe, all right, I don't want all these dates to show up. I just want, right, we're showing the past 3, 4, 5 dates, and there are all these dates in between. Maybe you do want the dates there so that you can understand the amount of time that occurred between sessions. But if you don't, one workaround to this is to click on the axis, right-click, Format Axis, and instead of having this be a date axis, which is, well, right now it's automatically selected, but the same thing will happen if I select date, because it chooses dates because they're in a date format. I can make it a text axis, and then now it's looking at this data on the bottom, or these axes labels, as text, not dates. So there are no dates in between because they don't recognize dates anymore, or the axis doesn't recognize dates anymore. So we have that done. And now, you know what, maybe I want one of these bars to be a line. And the way that you change the type of graph it is if you click on the series, right click, there's something that's going to say change series chart type. And I'm going to change this to be, well, do I want load to be a line? or something else. Some of these don't work with a bar chart, but I know that a line does. We could have it be an area. Maybe I want load to be a line with markers like that. But you know what? It doesn't really make sense to have it on the same axis as the readiness because the units may be very different. And I'm going to talk about this in a minute, but let's put it on a different axis. And now we have a chart, right? Over time, we got load and readiness. What you might want to do is set the axes, but in this case, I'm not because of an issue that we're going to run into. Excuse me. RPE is 1 to 10. Duration can be anywhere up to 300. And what you're going to notice is right now it's on duration, and we have the range 0 to 120. But if I switch it to RPE, the range is going to switch. So if I do set this axis to be, let's say, 0 to 200, because duration could reach up to 200, then we're not going to really see any change with RPE. Maybe if we go to duration, because the units are higher, we'll see a little bit more change. And when we see SRPE, we probably won't see anything because, or maybe we'll see a little bit, but we choose SRP, now it's outside of the range. So we'd have to increase the range to be, I don't know, 1,000, 10,000, 1,000. I wanted to say 1,000. Now we see something. So this is an issue. I'm just going to reset it and just have it be auto, because that works best in this scenario where the scales change when you select an item. So, all right, the next thing I'm going to do really quickly is I'm just going to organize this a little bit differently. I'm going to move load down here. I'm going to move readiness over here. Just move the chart over. And let's add a title to the chart so that we know what we're looking at. And when you, at least in this Excel version, if you click on this plus button, you can add things, remove things. You can add data labels to things and organize those. You can add a table underneath, error bars, a legend. You can add a bunch of things. I'm adding a chart title, but I don't want this chart title to say, team report. I want it to reflect what I'm looking at. And what you can do in Excel is you can have dynamic titles. And the way that I like doing this is I like to put multiple things together and put them in the title. So the cohort is athletes, the load is whatever this is, or so the cohort is whatever this is, the load is whatever this is, and the readiness is whatever this is. And I want a title that kind of reflects that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these words and combine them into kind of a sentence using a formula down by our data that will eventually be hidden. So I'm going to use the concatenate formula equals concat, and you'll see something that says concatenate. And all this is doing is it's telling me it wants me to give it text, or something to put together or to string together. So I'm going to say the first thing that I want is the cohort. So the text that's going to be reflected is going to be whatever inside this cell. And then what's the next text, comma. The next text is going to be a colon and a space. I want the cohort with a colon, and then I want to describe what we're looking at within that cohort. Do a comma. So athletes, colon, let's say SRPE, or the load, comma, and then I'm going to do another quote. This is telling, again, like the colon, this is telling Excel, all right, there's going to be some text in here that's not in a cell. Say space, verse, or VS, period, space, parentheses, comma, and then whatever's in here. And I am going to close the parentheses, click enter. And now in this cell, it's gonna display that. It's gonna display whatever's in A48 with a colon and a space, then whatever's in A50, and then a space, VS dot space, and then whatever's in A52. Now what I can tell Excel to do is if I click on again, click on the outline of this chart title. I can click equals, and I'm going to click this cell. And when I click enter, it's displaying whatever is in this cell. So let's say that I were to flip this cohort to class average and this to duration. The title will adjust appropriately and tell me, okay, now we're looking at the class average duration versus energy, or duration versus readiness score, or whatever it is. So I just clicked on it and I bolded it to make it a little bit nicer. And what I'm thinking right now is that maybe I don't know the best way to do it, but I always kind of want to see the SRPE and the readiness score specifically, because those are kind of two KPIs or key performance indicators that I want to look at over time. So what I'm thinking is that there are going to be two graphs here. One is going to be here, right? And one is going to be, I mean, this is just a placeholder for now. One is going to be here. So we're going to have two graphs. This is going to be, ultimately, it's going to be SRP versus energy versus readiness score. And this will probably, I'll just make it the class average or something. But we'll have two charts. One of them will be dynamic. One of them will be static. And this will be pretty much our report once we organize it a little bit better. So I'm trying to think of one thing that we can do now is I'm going to add a little bit of space. I'm going to add a row because I want a little bit of space here and here between the table, the averages, and the reports. I'm going to make the row height something like 10. I'm going to call, now we're getting into some visual stuff. I'm going to make all this white so that grid lines don't show up. I'm going to make all this white so that grid lines don't show up. Then you know what? I might color this space like, I don't know, gray for now. And I'm going to come back in the next video and have a plan for how I want to brand this thing, I guess. Like, I'm probably going to do something with like UVM colors or something like that, but I haven't figured that out yet. And remember, so I'm going to go through this now, but I'm just going to color those so I know that they're active and we can change them. So remember, this date, we set this up in a way where this date is telling these graphs what to do. This formula here is looking at this date, equals B3. So if I change this date to 1/28/2020, you're going to see there's actually an error in my formula that we're going to have to fix right now. But if I change that to 1/28/2020, all right, yeah, we already did this. Our information changes. But now our graph changes too. However, there's a little bit of an error in my formula. And let's go through this really quickly because it's a good learning opportunity. So what the formula is saying is if C73 equals the minimum date in our data set, table daily date, then, comma, make it blank. But if not, if that's not the case, so if this is not the minimum date in the data set, then get the maximum date in our data set if it's less than whatever's in this cell. So this is not the minimum date in the data set, so it's not going to be blank. And now it's taking the max of the date that's less than this cell, and there's no date in this cell. So what this is doing is saying, well, I don't know what the max date is. I'll just put the minimum date that there is in the, like, in Excel here. So one thing that we can do to remedy this issue is we can use an or statement. So instead of just saying if this cell is the minimum date, make it blank, we can say if or, let's see, cell is the minimum date, or, comma, this cell is equal to blank, close off the or statement, then make it blank. And if neither of those are true, then get the maximum date that's less than whatever that cell is. I'm going to click enter. All right, so it worked. because this cell is blank, which is one of the two OR criteria, this is now blank. Now I'm going to copy this formula, paste it to the next one, but I need to make sure that it's looking at the right cells because we have, again, just a quick recap, we have things hidden here, cells hidden here. So this is looking at D73, but we want F73 for all of these because that's the date that or that's the cell that we're looking at. And now I'm going to copy this one, paste it to the next one. And now we're looking at I, perfect. And then let's paste it in the I one. So I'll copy that one, paste it in the I one. Now we're looking at L, perfect. And now what I need to do is I just need to do what I was going to do to begin with, which is, so right now, this date, I'm going to make it a little bigger for now, is 1/28/2020, which is looking at this date that we set here. Now, you may choose that, you know what, I want to control the graphs separately than what controls the rest of the dashboard, which is the numbers up here and the table. And let's set it up that way, because you know what, we can treat these things independently if we want. What that entails is us creating another way to manipulate this with a date. So I typed in date. I'm going to make it consistent to everything else, bold it, and I'll put a yellow box here. And right now, let's have nothing in there. And this is as simple as saying, instead of this cell equaling whatever B3 is, let's have it equal whatever this cell is instead, A55. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lock it, be safe. So click enter. Whoa, that's a problem. Oh, no, it's not, because we haven't entered in a date here. So maybe this date is 2/4/2020. Click enter. Now our graphs are going off of this date instead. So now what we've done is now we have these graphs which are manipulatable by the cohort of interest, by a load type, and by a readiness score or something to do with readiness and a date. And this graph here is manipulatable by a date and a past, and it will aggregate information over the past X number of days, with this being a number of days that you decide. So right now, this is information for 1/28/2020, but if we type in the number 7, the information will change and display averages for the previous 7 days relative to 1/28/2020. So what is the average energy over the previous 7 days relative to this date? And that's all I'm going to do. No, it's not. One thing that I like to do with graphs is I like to remove the grid lines. You click on them and click delete to do that. That's what I'm going to do. You don't have to do it. And another thing that I like to do is I like to remove, well, this is this is an important thing to understand. A lot of this is trial and error. So I don't know how this is going to look when it's said and done. I may make a lot of different manipulations. For example, the colors. I don't know if I want these colors to be what they are. I don't know if I want the borders to be there. But let's go through a little bit of that now, just to get you accustomed to it. So right now, this has a border on it. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe if I make all this white, you'll be able to see it. So if I make all that white, you can see these graphs have borders on them. I'm going to undo that. But if I click on this, I can say no line, and I can do the same thing here. Border, no line. Now I'm going to make all this white again. And there are no borders. You can't see the borders anymore because they don't exist. Oh, I'm going to undo. Now, another thing that I don't like is, well, it depends on the context, but for now, I'm going to remove the inside of this, or I don't want the fill. I want there to be a transparent fill. So I can go to fill. Right now it's automatic, which is white. You could fill it any color you want. I click solid fill. Maybe I want it to be green. I'm going to say no fill, so it's transparent. Same thing with this one, no fill. And maybe I'll just change colors of the bars and the lines. I think I'm going to do something University of Vermont related. So what I'm going to do, these aren't going to be the exact colors, but now I clicked on the bars. So now when I'm editing this stuff, and there's a lot of stuff that I can edit, it pertains to the bars. So I can choose the axis it's on, gap width, what that does. You'll see if I make it 100, bars will look like they're thicker. If I make it 300, they'll look like they're skinnier. A lot of tools in here. I'm going to make it 200 for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this color thing, do a solid fill. Oh, perfect, green. That's what I want. And for this, for the line with markers, notice there are two areas here. There's line and there's a marker. Be careful with this because sometimes it can get a little bit tricky, but the line, yes, I want it to be a solid line. I don't want it to be blue though. Maybe I want it to be this yellowish color. I can adjust the thickness. Right now it's thick. Maybe I want it to be really skinny, 0.5. Or maybe I do want it to be really thick, like 2. Fine. And then when I go to the marker, I go marker options. Maybe these markers are, a little bit small for me. So if I go to marker options, number one, I can choose, do I want them to be squares? Do I want them to be triangles maybe? No, I don't. I actually want them to be circles. So I'm going to go back to circles. Or you can put in another image. We could do this just for fun later, but if you wanted an image of a cat or something, or for us like a catamount for Vermont, we could do that. But I'm going to make them a solid fill. It's choosing green. I don't want green. I want it to be that same yellow color, but I want that color to be darker. So I'm going to go to more colors and just drag this down to like more of a goldish thing. And maybe I want the markers to be a little bit bigger. Instead of 5, I want them, you'll see, all right, if I do 25, they're going to be huge, but maybe I want them to be 7. Oh, and there are borders around the markers. So that's where it's important. When you're in marker, there's a border thing. Maybe I don't want a border there. I can say no line. If I go back out, there. All right, cool. I have a graph with Vermont-like colors, and we can go through more of the features of this as well. One important thing to look out for is this, size and properties. Properties, move in size with cells. I'm scared to do this because I don't know what's going to happen. But I always say don't move or size with cells. Because when you have this selected, when you manipulate cells in your spreadsheet, the graph will change too. Like, I don't know if this is going to work or not. If I select these rows and I delete them, look what happened to my graphs. They shrunk, which is fine. You may want that. But if I go to the graph and I go to the size and properties, which is that button there, and I say don't move or size with cells, then I know that no matter what, this graph is going to be exactly the way that I put it, no matter what happens. It's going to stay in the same place. It's not going to move. So let's just try deleting these rows again. That one moved because I didn't edit it. This one stays the same. I'm going to undo that, and that's going to be it for this video. And in the next one, maybe let's actually put together something that makes sense with SRP and readiness. And we're going to organize this top area to look a lot more sexy, if you will. And then we'll kind of go from there. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.